Welcome back to Trilogy's YouTube channel, reporting to you today from our Hatton Garden store on this lovely snowy day in London. Today we're going to talk about a very special topic and something which I'm sure a lot of you will be interested in, and that is how to make money from investing in watches. We've got a lot of good watches to speak about, a lot of good points on investments, but before we get into the video, our watch of the day is the Cartier Santos De Cartier Blue Dial, which is a really stunning and really popular piece. Over the last decade, Cartier as a watchmaker is starting to dwindle in popularity as fashion moved away from really large and chunky watches like the Cartier Santos 100 and the 100 Chrono XL. However, this all changed in 2018 when Cartier came out with the Santos De Cartier, which was their new updated model. It was initially released in steel, bimetal and a couple of gold options, as well as obviously the really stunning skeleton. These watches were popular and the steel model came with the classic silver and Roman numeral dial. But then in 2019, Cartier came up with a bit of a shocker, which was the blue graduated dial, which is a stunning piece and is becoming increasingly more popular and really allowed Cartier to step back into popularity in the watch game. Now Cartier are once again known as manufacturers of luxury, fashionable steel sports pieces. This watch comes with the steel band and the blue strap, as well as box and papers. It's a 2020 full set and it can be purchased today for $6,650. Over the last few years, there's been a lot more talk about watches as an investment. People have been buying them to speculate on the increase in price rather than just they like the watch, the design, or the complications are useful to them. What is my take on this trend? I believe watches can be an investment if purchased correctly and from the right sources. Obviously, you need to make the correct decision on a watch purchase. Some watches you can make fantastic returns on, which we'll talk about later in the video, and some you can lose a lot of your money and be left holding the bag. So, is a watch an investment? To answer this question, we must first define what an investment is. An investment is defined as an asset or item acquired with the goal of generating income or appreciation. When we apply this to watches, this certainly can be a true statement. If we look at some of the most popular watches over the last 5 years, then this statement certainly rings true. For example, this ceramic Daytona in stainless steel. Back in 2016, when this watch was released, they were retailing for around $9,000. But as we all know, you really can't buy one at retail unless you're a VIP client. So on the secondary market where we operate, they were going for around $13,000. But today, this same watch is $20,000. This is a £7,000 profit in 5 years. This represents a 53.7% increase over the period. An average year-on-year return of 10.7%, which I think we can all agree is a fantastic percentage return. However, this isn't true for other watches. For example, had you bought a Hublot over the same period, it's more likely you would have lost 50% of your capital and would be left holding the bag when it would be hard to move on. This goes to show the importance of investing wisely in a timepiece so that you can make the correct decision and not be left bag holding something like a Hublot or a Franck Muller and something that is going to go up in value, such as the Rolex Daytona. There's a big thing I would like to point out with watches as an investment, which I believe a lot of people don't understand. It's not really a overnight thing. It's not like you could pick one watch up today and sell it immediately tomorrow for a couple of grand profit. That's not how it works. It's not a stock. The way you should look at it more is like a house. You buy it now, and over time, the price will appreciate, and in years to come, in 3, 5 years, maybe even 10, you can sell it for a significant profit if you've purchased the right piece. If you go into it looking to make an instant profit, I believe you will be disappointed. But if you just hold for the long term, then I believe you can make a nice profit on a popular piece. When thinking about what watch could be an investment piece and where you're going to spend your money, there are a number of important factors to consider. Number one, the availability of the watch. A lot of watches, as we know, have huge waiting lists with the authorised dealers. This goes for stainless steel Rolex sports models, Patek sports models, the Nautilus and the Aquanaut, and a lot of Richard Milles as well, which I did a video on last week on the RM11. You should check that out in the channel. With the watches I've just mentioned, the demand for them far outstrips the supply. Obviously, these watchmakers are limited to the number they can make, and they obviously don't want to flood the market, driving the price down. We have seen this with the Cartier that we mentioned earlier and with the Franck Mullers. Something else to consider when thinking about investing in a watch is what I like to call speculative investment watches. These are watches that are discontinued or are rumoured to be discontinued, such as the Rose Gold Day Date 2 or the Hulk, as we saw last year. The Hulk in 2020 was trading at around 14,000 pre-discontinuation, but then in September, when Rolex released their new models, the Hulk was discontinued, and overnight it jumped up to 18k. This would have been a fantastic time to sell your Hulk, and you would have made a sizable return, up 4,000 and up in some cases, in less than a year. The Hulk has now come back down a bit and has settled around the 15 to 16k mark for a new one. But I do think for a long-term strategy, this could be good, because obviously being discontinued, the supply is now at a limited level and there won't ever be any more produced. So as there's more and more collectors chasing the same watch, this is naturally going to drive up the price. So what is it that makes a watch more or less available? Supply of the watch is one. Manufacturers, as mentioned earlier, can only make a certain number of watches in a year. For Patek Philippe, this is 62,000 watches circa, across all their lines. So for the Aquanaut and the Nautilus, which are the two really popular sports models, they can only really be producing a few thousand a year. If you're lucky enough to get on the waiting list and get one at retail, you're definitely going to make an instant return, even though Patek are in some cases still holding the papers, so you may not be able to sell it straight away. When talking about stainless steel sports watches, the Patek Nautilus really is the cream of the crop. It's the most highly coveted model that all the collectors want to get, and there's tons of collectors chasing around this limited supply of models, which, like in any market, is going to drive the price up. The demand for the Patek Nautilus is far, far greater than supply will ever be, and this makes it a fantastic investment piece. One of the best, in my opinion. Okay, so let's talk about metals. Stainless steel sports models are really the most popular watches that everyone is looking to buy all the time, globally. These are the watches, obviously, with the longest waiting lists. The brand that is the king of the stainless steel sports model, obviously, is Rolex. When you think of steel sports models, most people's mind would go to Rolex. Rolex have so many different stainless steel sports models with long waiting lists across their line. They have one of the best marketing teams in the entire watch game. A few years ago, it was just the Daytona and the Submariner that were the really popular pieces with waiting lists. Now, you can't buy any stainless steel Rolex in a gent size at retail. You have to be a VIP client or buy something in conjunction with that, even down to the Oyster Perpetual and Air King range, which were both unloved just a few years ago. When choosing to purchase a steel Rolex, especially for investment purposes, you should definitely pay careful consideration to which one you choose, as some of these can perform better for long-term capital appreciation than others. For example, the Daytona, as previously mentioned, is one of the most popular Rolex pieces, no matter the metal, so that naturally will make it a fantastic investment piece. The other one that I would say is really popular and would be good for long-term investment would be the Steel Submariner, with date or without date. The Sub has been the go-to tool watch for many years. It is one of the most highly coveted watches on the planet and probably the most recognisable watch in the world. People, even if they aren't into tool watches, will recognise the Submariner as a Rolex. For this reason, I believe it is a fantastic investment piece if you're looking for long-term, steady capital growth. To relate it to financial instruments, I would describe the Sub-Date as a long-term government bond. You know it's never going to boom overnight, but it is somewhere safe to put your money for long-term growth, whilst you also get the added benefit of wearing this stunning and recognisable timepiece. Now, apart from metals, dials are also a really important factor to consider when looking to purchase a watch. The dial can really have a big impact on the price of a watch, even if it is the same model. One with one dial can be going for many thousands more than with a different dial. We'll talk about a few of these examples now. Right here I have the yellow gold Daytona with the blue racing dial. This is a really popular and really rare watch. There are only 4 for sale online in full yellow gold with that rare racing blue dial, and this is one of them. For a normal 116528 Daytona, you'd be looking at spending 27 to 28,000 on one at the moment. But with this dial, they're going for 30k plus. A lot of people like the allure of owning and wearing a watch that no other person is likely to wear. Walking into a room and you know nobody else is wearing that piece. That is special to a lot of people and it's worth paying a premium. Also, as we all know, blue dials are the most popular dials and it just works so well on this yellow Daytona. This dial was produced in very small numbers, naturally adding to its rarity. There are a few more available in the bimetal configuration than there are in the yellow gold, which makes the yellow gold even more special. Just 3 years ago, this watch with this dial could have been picked up for 22k. But now, in this day and age, as we said, it's 30,000. That represents an £8,000 return in just 3 years, meaning it has risen 36% over this 3-year period, which is 12% a year. That return far outstrips that of a FTSE index fund, which will net you, on average, 8% a year, whilst you also get the added benefit of wearing this stunning yellow gold Rolex Daytona. Another great example of how important dials are when making an investment decision is this: the Rose Gold Anniversary Olive Day-Date 40 Green. This watch was released in 2016 to celebrate 60 years of production of the Rolex Day-Date, originally released in 1956. This was the first watch to have both the day and date wheel featured on its dial. I was selling these watches just 2 years ago for 24,000. But today, I wouldn't take any less than 37,000 for this piece. That is a crazy return, over 50% in just 2 years. This is a great looking watch, and something about this green dial with the ever rose gold just really works for me, I think, and obviously for a lot of people, which is why it's driven up the price so high. If I knew what I knew now, I would go back to 2019 and just buy up these olives, or even back to 2016 and just sit and wait for my collection to boom. As an investment decision, this would have been a harder one to make because nobody knew how popular these watches really were going to be when they were released. Even up to 18 months ago, they weren't really that popular, but all of a sudden they have just gone crazy. I think it's the green dial thing. You can see it with the yellow gold green Daytona, the Hulk, and this watch. I think the classic Rolex green on a watch really works well, and it's a really great one for collectors. Out of nowhere, the Day 40 Olive just became the hottest watch on the market, and they're getting harder and harder to get. This will be well over 40k in just a few months' time. So if anything else comes out in green, I expect it to boom, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Lastly, I just want to make this point. Watches as an investment and an asset class are really a new thing. It is hard to accurately pinpoint where these watches will go. Whilst it is true they are the most popular they've ever been, and demand and prices are continually rising, this may not always be the case. The good thing is the watch market, like all markets, works on the laws of supply and demand, and supply is something that's never really going to increase by substantial amounts. All the watchmakers are limited by, obviously, production constraints and the amount they produce. I believe brands like Rolex do sort of hold back on what they can produce. They maybe could produce more, but this goes back to what I said earlier. They do have a great marketing team, and they know that holding the supply back is going to drive their prices up, which makes them more attractive, both brand new and secondhand, as collectors can buy a watch and know that their money is safe in that timepiece long term. I would just like to leave you with this thought. Purchasing a watch should not only be done to make money. These are beautiful things that we can enjoy and wear every day, and their complications have been useful since their invention. It really is just an added bonus that for us avid collectors, these things have just boomed in the last 15, 20 years or so, and it shows no signs of slowing down. When you're looking for a watch, the resale value and long-term investment proposition definitely is something to be considered. And I believe in the long term, more and more people will see luxury Swiss timepieces as an alternative investment proposition to be considered, of which you can make a great long-term capital appreciation, as well as get to enjoy it on a day-to-day basis. Because that really is why we buy them. We buy them to look at and enjoy. Some people buy them to show off, but most of us just buy them just because we love them. That's why I got into the business in the first place. The more and more people start to see this as an investment and continue to buy for speculative purposes will only add to the strength of the watch market and make prices rise further and further. There really is no limit to where this can go. I would like to just point out this is just my opinion and this isn't investment advice. Always do further research before you make an investment decision, especially on something you're not sure of, such as a timepiece. Comment below your thoughts on this video, any investment pieces I've missed or the next watch you believe to blow up. Let's get a discussion going about this. If you like this video, please hit the like button and the subscribe button. Check back next week for more updates on the watch market and reviews on some of the hardest to procure timepieces. Thanks very much.